Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Beyond Clean Mailbag. I'm here with Hank Balch, Mike Matthews, and Lisa McCown, and we're going to solve some of your sterile processing issues for you guys. Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Let's see. We got a question here for the Beyond Clean Mailbag. There are several disinfectors on the market, such as the ASP EvoTech and the CS Medical T-Clean that you claim can process GI scopes or T-probes without first manually cleaning. I know in the case of the EvoTech, there are several stipulations in which you're required to manually clean, so delayed reprocessing, if there's excessive bleeding, or the use of clips. The T-Clean states that it is validated to clean and disinfect a probe that was cleaned at the bedside. In the case of these reprocessors, which IFU do you follow, the reprocessors or the item you are processing? And that comes from Tanya.
So, Lisa, do you want to take the first stab at this one? I think there's a lot of different topics and angles. Just like with any question, there's an answer to the question, but then there's a lot of other questions about the question that I think deserve to be answered as well. So you can start wherever you'd like on this one.
Okay. So first of all, I would like to suggest that following the manufacturer's instructions for use for the device will always trump the manufacturer's IFU for the equipment, because you could very well need a totally different system or chemical or process for a device, and I've been in situations where there is a conflict in the instructions between the two, and I've actually reached out to the manufacturer of both to get some clarification.
Yeah, that's the first point there, Lisa, and I really want to jump in there to highlight that, because a lot of folks don't, I don't know if they don't realize or if they just don't think about it in the process because things get so frustrating and confusing there, but you can always call, and you always should call, the manufacturer anytime you have any question about that conflict, because many times, and I've seen this to my own experience, if you contact them, they've already got exceptions made. They can send you like a pre-form that says, oh yeah, we've had that question 20 times this year, and here's the tip sheet that we have, and this is what you need to do. And there, problem solved. It could save you hours of frustration. It could save you having to change your policy or even potentially trying to change your devices or your equipment. So yeah, that needs to be the first step always. Contact the manufacturer and ask for more information. Sorry, Mike, did you have anything to add on that?
Well, no, I was just going to echo what you said, that, never forget you're part of a network. If you're listening to this, you're part of a network. You are not the only one who has ever had this problem. You're not the only one who's using these devices. Reach out. Yes, there are other people who have struggled with this who may have already done the legwork for you.
Absolutely. And even if, the manufacturer is learning about this for the first time, that's good for them. Right. And they can do some investigative work and update their instructions accordingly. So
I'm really glad Lisa took this, because my suggestion was going to be that you take the two biggest people in your department and you assign them each one of the IFUs and let them wrestle, and whoever wins, that's the one you follow.
I mean, you could still do that anyways, right, Mike? But I don't know how compliant that would end up being.
I mean, it's just as good as, you could do the coin flip method, but
yeah, well,
I think Lisa's answer is better.
I also want to bring up, though, too, and this is kind of what I meant about those background questions, and we've had this come up a couple of times on the Beyond Clean podcast. I think one of the early season 1 episodes even talked about this, but there is a move in the industry to more and more automation in this space, and there's good reasons for it. We're trying to do away with manual steps, because anytime you have manual steps, you have non-compliance, and you have a lot of inconsistency, right? So like your brushing of a channel is going to be a bit different than my brushing of a channel. Just the technique, just the strength. I know, Mike, you're joking about the two biggest people, but there are different size people and different strengths of people that work in our departments. And if you're doing manual process, whatever it is, actuating devices, brushing, soaking, taking them apart, whatever, that adds complexity to the process, and complexity is the mother of error, in my opinion. So in Europe especially, we see a much more openness to automation and removing even the manual cleaning step in a lot of these devices. So in the US, we kind of see that. We're like, oh, hold on, like you can't get rid of the manual cleaning. That's not scientifically possible. No, it is scientifically possible. Now, is it approved by FDA, by these device manufacturers, regardless of what the equipment manufacturers are claiming? That's the question for us. But I think it's important for this episode for everyone to walk away saying it is possible. Like, that's how science works. That's how automation works. They make these processes more consistent, more effective, even than Johnny can be in the department scrubbing and cleaning. And that doesn't answer this question, though. Today, what is the right decision to make for these conflicting IFUs, and is it safe to do? Because we can't speak to specifics on that scope and that endo reprocessing machine.
I will say that one general rule that's used for like accreditation surveys is when there are two standards that are in conflict with each other, the more stringent standard wins. So sometimes, that may or may not affect this discussion depending upon what we're talking about. But it's okay, in my opinion, to manually clean a device that maybe didn't have to be manually cleaned according to the AER's IFU, because guess what? It just went into the AER a little cleaner. It's okay to do a little bit of double work sometimes if the end result is a cleaner device potentially, and it doesn't run any risk of damaging the device in the process. So you can err on the side of safety in some cases.
100% agree with that. In fact, that's what our manager decided to do when we switched over to, we bought all brand new Medivators, the Advantage Plus, and we had the feature to be able to utilize the manual clean in the AER, but we also chose to manually clean all of the scopes and then run it through the AER with both cycles, just as a safety precaution. And it kind of does bring in the conversation of point of care treatment.
Right. Huge.
We want that to be happening. And so, having the manual clean is, I think, an extra good step to do.
Well, and that compliance on the point of use cleaning, or that pre-cleaning, that is assumed, right, in the automated process. Because if you're not doing that, and the automated process is validated to that step, that any device we put in here has already been properly pre-cleaned, and you got a problem. And so it is important for folks to realize that a machine does not take out the human aspect of the process until there's no more people left in a department and it's all machines, and we're not anywhere close to that, right? So there's still a lot of decisions that have to be made. There's still a lot of steps that have to be conducted, including, I'm going to throw this over to Adam, your machine has to be up to date, has to be properly maintained, it has its own quality testing, it has to happen, and its own preventative maintenance and everything else. It has to be documented. Otherwise, no matter how that process was validated, if the machine is not working up to the optimal performance, it's not going to do what you think it's going to do.
Right, and that's the testing of the machines, the testing of whatever process it is that you're using is vital to ensuring that you're getting a quality product at the end. And I kind of look at these two things a little bit separately. So I look at like a T-probe or something that's like an externally cleaned device. If it's pre-cleaned at the point of use, then it's probably going to be fine to go into some type of reprocessor and be cleaned externally. Whereas like a complex endoscope with instrument channels and something like that is going to be a lot tougher for an AER to get in there and clean, because it doesn't have like that manual brushing step. So that would require, I would say, a human to go in there with the brushes, make sure it's clean on the other end. And of course, using the appropriate size, the appropriate dilution of all the, enzymatics and detergents and all that too. But those are things that, and Hank alluded to this earlier too, that automation breeds consistency, and it's consistency of the product that creates that quality. We want the same product every single time. We want it to be either sterile or high level disinfected so that it's safe to use on a patient. And again, if we can have that automation, that breeds consistency, and that should be exactly what we're looking for. We want that quality product every single time.
Speaking of automation, and Mike, I think you presented on this in the fall here recently, but folks in sterile processing, and I think just out in the world, they hear the term automation and they immediately think about all the negatives of automation, and you've probably seen the memes like, don't use the self-checkout because that puts the cashiers out of a job, which, that may be true, right? Like, I don't want to comment on that. But in sterile processing, there's a lot of pros to automation that we don't really think about. Do you want to speak to that in your experience, your perspective?
Yeah, I did present on this, and this could be a 30-minute discussion in and of itself. I will say that historically speaking, I love history. I'm a history guy. One of the podcasts I listened to in its entirety when I was in decontamination at Jewish Hospital, Hank, was the History of Rome. It was like 350 podcasts long. I listened to all of them. Yeah, it's great. So if you look at history, you can see that this has been a consistent problem as we move through the industrialized era, where people would fight automation, and eventually automation would win. And then people would get better paying jobs. They would learn to control the automation, and then everybody moves on. The reason why we have vehicles at the cost that we do is because of automation. Those are the reasons why we've been able to move forward. And, like it or not, there are tasks in sterile processing that are can be very easily handled by automation, and we should want that, because what that's going to do is that's going to free us up to do the things that only an experienced, trained technician can do.
Right. Well, those are the dangerous things.
Yes.
Like, those are things that could hurt you, like poke you or infect you, right? If you want to automate.
These are the things, or the things that are just straight up boring,
right?
The things that you do repetitively, and your mind starts to wonder because it's not engaging you, because it's a simple repetitive task, right? And that's when mistakes happen too, when you've mentally checked out. That happens, and so automation is not something to be fought. Number one, because you'll lose. Ask John Henry. If you don't know what that reference is, look it up on Wikipedia. There's a whole song about it. Right. But the point is that, if John Henry hadn't have fought automation, he would have been alive, and he probably could have been the head of the automation department and made a lot more money and had a lot less stress.
Right. All right, before we close this out, Lisa or Adam, do you have anything else to add to the question or to the hot topic of automation? Because I'm sure we're going to get some feedback on this one for sure.
One thing I would like to add is that our industry is evolving, and we really do need to prepare the workforce for the jobs of the future. And even if those are just, 5 years away, even, automation is coming. And if you think about it, our world really can fit within like the STEM, science, technology, where we do have kind of an engineering, it's kind of like a weird hybrid kind of a role, right. And the more that we add technology as an augment to our work, where it's assistive devices that help us do our jobs better. The more technical and the more it will progress our profession. And so that's something we want.
Yeah. That's a great point, Lisa.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you got any hate mail, as usual, send it to Mike at beyondclean.net. For everything else, any additional questions about this topic or other topics that you want to cover on the Mailbag series, you can send it to info@beyondclean.net. Thank you again to the rest of the panel and for the questioner. Hopefully we gave you some insight and perspective to think about. And until next time, guys, keep fighting dirty.